Hi everyone, Alvina from Arcadier here. Today on Inspired, we have Keith Teo, co-founder and CEO of Raydar, a stock photo aggregator platform that allows anybody to search over hundreds of millions of images online and was recently acqui-hired by ad tech company AdZiggy. Keith was formerly marketing executive at DKSH Technology and is passionate about creating change using technology, specifically in the areas of design, media, environment, and energy. Hi, Keith.
Hi.
Great to have you today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the very nice introduction.
No problem.
Yeah.
So maybe just to start with, you can tell everybody a little bit about yourself and what made you want to start Raydar.
Okay. So I graduated with a marketing degree, and most of my friends went into advertising, and I think that was so my first role, like you said, was a marketing position for about 3+ years in a company called DKSH. So for those of you who do not know what DKSH is, in a nutshell, it's like the P&G but from Switzerland. So we handle a lot of FMCG brands, pharmaceutical brands, and distribute and resell them across Southeast Asia and Asia primarily. So being exposed in that role, I knew a lot about the gaps that advertisers and marketers face when they were creating designs, when they're doing advertising campaigns, and a lot of them, especially in Asia, boiled down to having the right kind of images or videos for your advertising and branding campaigns that really appeals to your local audiences. And that was a pain point that we identified, and that was how we came up with the idea of Raydar. So the inspiration of Raydar was really through working with advertisers and internal teams, marketing teams. We felt that it was very time consuming to find the right images, and we wanted a simpler way to find images through as many platforms as possible as there are in the world, because there is like the top 3 brands, the Shutterstock, the Getty, the iStock, but there's a lot more brands that people do not know of. And we felt that when they do know about these brands, it's actually a lot easier to find images. So that's how we all started.
Very nice. So Raydar is a search engine and a kind of a marketplace as well for stock images. So as a marketplace owner, what were some of the largest challenges or obstacles you faced in order to build it?
Yeah. So I think with all marketplaces, there is this, the 2 classic challenges, your chicken and egg of supply and demand.
Yeah.
And I think everyone who has built a marketplace will have faced this dilemma before. And if you've listened to many VCs and investors or ex-founders, they've all shared their own points of view. So it's really the same classic issues, solving the supply side or demand side, and which one to solve first. And then after that is really just finding the right demand to grow your platform. So we faced these same 3 issues, and we solved it. For us, we solved it by finding supply first, because I think really understanding your space, it's the most important, like what issues you are solving. And for us, it was solving the issue of search. And search means you need to have content for people to search. You can't just search in stock photos space. You can't just search 1 million photos. You need to have like 50 million, 100 million photos to really solve that problem of what we are trying to solve. And therefore, we started from the angle first. And for us, it was a very interesting journey, I would say, because no one would think of Singapore or Southeast Asia to start a stock photo company. So if you look at all the giants, they're all based in the US or in Europe. Like LME is based in the US, but they have a strong team in London. Shutterstock is New York. All the big brands are there. So for us, when we went out to get suppliers, it was both challenging as well as interesting, because we actually saw that people were willing to take risks and work with a partner from Southeast Asia, from Singapore, a very small country with very small demand, and they know that. That's why they don't have bases and teams here, or at least most of them don't, other than Getty. And they were willing to take risk and work with us. So we managed to solve that supply angle through finding that gap that we know that suppliers want that will benefit them. Meaning suppliers from the US, from Europe, they want a way to enter Southeast Asia, apart from China, of course, and a safe way to enter Southeast Asia through someone who is from a country that has a recognized legal system, and I think we appealed to them in that manner. So it's really finding out what appeals to your suppliers, your partners, when you're working on the supply side. And then after that, it's so once we solved that, the next big thing to solve was the demand side. So we also face dilemmas I think most online marketplaces will face. Do you go local first, or do you go global from day one, or do you find a sweet spot and grow regional like if you're in Europe? Because Europe covers so many countries.
Yeah.
So there is really no right or wrong. For us, we decided to go global from day one because of the nature of the problem that we're solving. But looking back on hindsight, now that we've at this stage, and now that we're part of a bigger company, I would have went more local first.
How interesting.
So it really depends on many things. Like again, it really depends on the product you're selling and the problem you're solving at what time. So looking back at that time, I would say I would go local first because we didn't have that kind of resources to compete on a global level. Yeah.
What kind of resources are you talking about?
So in our space, companies were very competitive. So stock photos were becoming commoditized. So companies were becoming very competitive with their prices. There were a lot of discounts being thrown around, and so we couldn't compete at that level. Because of the nature of our business model as a reseller, we didn't have our own inventory. We didn't have our own photos to directly sell. So we were susceptible to their promotion campaigns, and we were very vulnerable to how much discounts they were willing to give us, and not to give us versus how much discounts they're willing to give their direct customers. Yeah. So I would say looking back, I would have gone more local. But again, this really depends on what you're selling. And is your marketplace a very local play or a regional play, or do you need to go global from day one? Because some products do need that kind of scale. Yeah.
How do you think that going local would have changed that aspect of almost the race to the bottom for pricing?
So it's about what's that phrase? Defensibility, and what IP do you have that's really defensible against your competitors? Because for us, when we were reselling products, the products were not unique. Other resellers or other partners, or even those platforms who give us their photos, they have those content. But if you go local, that means you are able to identify what are the content gaps, what are the market gaps in your local ecosystem by speaking to your customers directly, or more chance to speak to them directly face to face, and not just through Skype or emails. That will give you a lot of insights to what kind of problems that they are solving, that you need to solve for them. And by doing that, then you can develop your own product, in our case our own photo library, and then this will be defensible against other competitors, or at least more defensible than slashing prices and competing on a price basis.
Very nice.
Yeah.
All right, so the next question I have for you is more as you as an entrepreneur and as a business owner. So as a co-founder, what were some of the biggest obstacles you faced as a leader? Okay,
so I think there's a lot, but if I were to point out one of the biggest challenge, I would say that is really finding product market fit. Because on top of talents, on top of strong suppliers, on top of getting demand, if you can't find the product market fit momentum, those other things don't matter anymore. So that would be the biggest challenge, because if you looked at, again, what is really product market fit and how people are trying to share what that is, there is really no way to really tell. But all of them say that when you are having product market fit, you know it. So I guess perhaps Arcadier could be in this kind of a position, but otherwise there's no way to really look at your metrics and say, oh, okay, we've got 5% penetration in this market, and then we've got product market fit. It may not be that case. But there will be signals like, for example, your customer service can't keep up with demand. Some famous founders have shared that, for example, your architecture cost is getting too high, more than you can support, and you need to scale up faster because of customer demand that is pending, that's not fulfilled. So these are some signals that could perhaps point to you that you are experiencing product market fit, but then again, there's no clear signals. And then the next thing is, what do you do when you have product market fit? So if you really find that sweet spot, and then the harder part comes into play where do you spend more marketing dollars and scale that up first to prevent your competitors from eating your pie because you kind of find that sweet spot with your customers? Or do you invest in architecture and building your stable platform and improve your customer experience? So again, it's very dependent on your scenario and time and what your other external factors are doing, your competitors are doing, and what resources you have. So again, there's no real answer to this, and that's why it's one of the hardest things to solve. Yeah.
Very good point.
Yeah.
All right. So obviously, every entrepreneur, every business owner wants or dreams of success, and that can come in all different shapes and sizes, whether it's going, IPO or being acquired or, being profitable for 30 years.
Yeah.
So as we mentioned before, Raydar has been acqui-hired by Arcadier. Congratulations again.
Thanks.
So what made you decide that being acqui-hired was the right move for Raydar? And maybe for everybody who's listening or tuning in, you can explain what acqui-hired actually means.
Okay. So acqui-hired is actually just being acquired and hired at the same time. So we went through the acquisition about 4 months back, and I think wind the time and ask me 3 years ago what I would want for the company, I would say an IPO or a huge sale to Getty Images or Shutterstock. I mean, every entrepreneur starts off with that dream.
Yeah.
But it's I guess it really depends on what aligns with you as an individual and as your co-founding team, and as as an entrepreneur who is responsible for your teams and employees, lives and future, what's the best option for them? Yeah, so for us, we could have raised another round of funding. We had a couple of options to do that. We could also continue scaling. We had sales coming in, we had users coming in. But at that time, the co-founding team felt that joining Arcadier was the best thing to do because of their long-term goals aligned with what our product's long-term goals was and still is, which is to really help small businesses grow. So again, it's really what aligns with the team and the company that you're acquiring. Because one thing I can share is through this process, we've also asked around and learn a lot from the other people who also acqui-hired by local companies. Grab has been acquiring a lot of companies in the region. So what are the things that the founders go through, and if this is something that the audience should consider. An important part of it is what will you do after you've been acquired? What will be the role you play, and what kind of clauses you need to be aware of? For example, if you get acqui-hired, can you leave the company in the next 1 to 2 years? Otherwise, what happens? Can your employees leave the company in the next 1 to 2 years? Otherwise, what happens? But more importantly, beyond that is what kind of role do you play? Because going from founders and business owners who are managing your own companies, managing your own marketplace, to joining someone who will give you instructions on what to do, where you'll be reporting to someone on your day-to-day and your week-to-weeks and your month-to-month and your strategic and goal plans, it's quite a big change.
For sure.
Yeah, so it really depends on how happy will you be, depends on how aligned with that acquirer's goal you are. Yeah, so if the goal is the same, I think everyone should be able to work along well. And again, like investments, similar to investments, if you're getting money from a VC, it's all about relationship.
Very true.
Yeah. So it's a long-term relationship they can't get out of. So if I'm not sure whether any of the other speakers have mentioned this, but getting money from a VC or investor is like it's like a marriage you can't get out of. There's no way you can kick your investors out unless something really drastic happens. Otherwise, it's gonna be for the long haul, and it's the same process and the same due diligence and the same mental preparation that you have to be prepared for when you get acquired, because it's the same thing. You can't get out of it for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
unless something drastic happens.
Did it take you a long time to kind of, change your mind about how you wanted to move forward? Did it take you a long time to be like, okay, yeah, this is the right move versus let's just keep on going on our own?
Yeah, I think it took us about maybe 2 to 3 months to think through it, which in startup terms is like a very long time. But because we knew the investors for a while before, we knew the acquirers for a while before, so like I said, it's all about the relationship you have with the team. Because after getting acquired, that means they'll most likely be your bosses, and it's the same as investors where you have to report to them.
Yeah.
So you need to have that experience of working together with them, how they'll be, how much freedom you will have in your future role, and what will your colleagues be doing in their future roles. Have that all planned out for you and your team before knowing that is a right or wrong decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very good point that relationships when it comes to business is just so important, whether it's finding partners or whether it's getting acquired or finding investors. Like, you really do have to be able to trust the people that you're with, and it is much longer term than you realize.
It's very, very long term, and this applies to getting suppliers and vendors as well. That's why I say, going back to the earlier point, if I could, I would go local first, because many times when you work with suppliers or even customers, that face-to-face meeting, even though you may be in the US, where it's supposed to be more advanced and people are okay with doing a Skype call, but still that face-to-face meeting, it's so important. It's so important to really sealing the deal or potentially ironing out future problems. Yeah, because you may be happy now, but 1 year later when problems occur, that face-to-face meeting, that relationship you build over that dinner or lunch will help you a lot.
It's very true. There's something to be said for just actually meeting physically a person. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, I know that a lot of our audience, are creating their own marketplace, their own businesses, and would love some advice when it comes to visuals. So first, why do you think that choosing the right visual is so important, or so, pivotal?
So we are still in the visual space now in SZD. So we are dealing with advertisements. So visual is still a huge part of what I do on a day-to-day basis, and it's super important. And I say this because of my background and my experiences, because that is the first impression that you give someone who sees your ad or who sees your your marketplace, your landing page. Copy tells them why you do it or how you do it, but I think visuals tell them what you do faster than your copy can. So on a marketplace, for example, your landing page, you will have your first fold will always have that what you do, and that copy complements the image. The image will always tell a faster story than your copy. So that copy is supposed to complement it, and that image not only just conveys what you do, but it's that tone of your brand's personality as well. Whether you're friendly or whether you are positioned as a cutting edge kind of a company, it really that image conveys that instantaneously, and people process images a lot faster. So that is why it's super important to find the right image.
Fair enough. I mean, images speak 1,000 words, right? So how would you typically advise people to choose the right images or visuals that are right for their company brand or campaign?
Okay, so I would say there's no clear process to do this.
Okay.
I have a certain preference for doing it, but I would say keep it agile, and that's because searching for the right images is like digging in a gold mine. So my recommendation to make it more succinct and useful is start with a tagline, have a clear goal of what message you want to convey first. So that helps with using the right keywords in the search engines, because as you know, stock photos is like every search engine has millions of photos. So that tagline helps you to come up with the initial search keywords or search queries, and then from there is really just spending the effort to go through the different results and finding the right images. And along the way, I'm sure you'll find that image that may not fit the tagline, but actually can fit the larger message that you're conveying. And that's where you have to be agile. So if that image is really that powerful. It conveys what you're trying to say, of what you do, or what you're selling straight away. Then you can actually change the tagline to fit that image.
Yeah.
Because the tagline and the image complement each other. It shouldn't be repetitive. So that being said, it's coming up with either one first. Yeah. So I always say searching for images is like a gold mine. So if you find one that is really, really, really good, be flexible and change the tagline to complement it.
It's very interesting you said it's about complementing and not being repetitive.
Yeah.
So do you have an example of how you maybe were agile when it came to choosing a visual or choosing something?
So, wow, so many. So it's like, so recently we were building our landing page, and we had a tagline in mind, and we wanted it to be, for example, at Ziggy to be a growth engine. So we were searching around for images around what does growth represent. So like either a stock market growth chart or a rocket. But then after that we realized that actually growth means a lot of different things to different people, and it's very cliche to convey it in that way. So you can have a rocket, but it's very cliche. You can have a chart. So we wanted it to be more down to earth and more. It resonates better, something that resonates better with our target audience. So we decided to go with an image on a graphic that shows the different small businesses that we are trying to target and work with. And from that, we actually changed our tagline to align more with that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it's an ongoing process. I would say your campaigns are never static. Your landing page should never be static as well. And your conversion pages, your checkout pages, all these where you have certain graphics perhaps to help people check out more, should never be static. So it's always about A/B testing and see which images help with that part of that page or or that conversion of that page. Yeah.
Awesome. So we've been talking about stock images, obviously. When would you recommend people to not use stock images and to actually create their own?
Yeah.
So there comes a point in time where sometimes you might need to.
Yes. I would say when you have money. So there are many use cases for stock images, and there are many use cases for not using stock images. So the obvious one when you should use your own images is obviously when you have your own product and you have a certain personality or certain way of presenting a product that you want it to be totally unique from your competitors. So that's when you have to invest in your own photographer or photo shoots. But otherwise, for most other use cases, to be honest, a stock image would do the job, unless because actually if you looked at campaigns from Apple, from a lot of the big brands, you can spot some stock images in there. It's never gonna be 100% pure. Video shoot, I don't know, but photo shoot, there will be cases in some campaigns, some brands more, some brands less, there will be some stock images there. Because the quality of stock images today has risen to a standard that's so high, where the buzzword now is authenticity in stock images. So a lot of stock libraries are going for what is authentic as a brand. How do you convey authenticity? How do you convey authenticity to your audience? So the libraries are getting very good at that. So I would say most stock images, if you have budget, go for the pricier ones, but still most stock images would do the job. So unless you have the budget to do your own photo shoots and come up with something custom that's really unique, and only because you need that to differentiate from your competitors, then I would say those would be the use cases.
It's so interesting that you brought up authenticity, because it is something that is a very big growing trend that everybody wants to know the actual brand. So it's interesting that when you think stock images, you don't necessarily think authentic or genuine because it's hundreds and multiple people can use them. But it is interesting that you also can grab that authenticity, and it is something that the industry is focusing on. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about visuals and how to choose them, or other things people should be aware of?
So one last thing to be careful of, I guess, is the issue about licenses. So with using stock images, there is always the caveat of making sure that you are purchasing the image or using a free stock image with the right license. So this has been an ongoing issue, but I think in the last couple of years and months, it has been surfacing again a bit more. And if you notice, I'm sure some of the audience have used Raydar before. Some of them obviously know Unsplash, Pexels, and Pixabay. So if you've noticed their licenses, they recently changed it to their own license. So Unsplash has their own Unsplash license that follows CC0, but it's not really CC0 because it's Unsplash license. So same goes for Pixabay and Pexels, if I'm not wrong. And it's just being aware if you are using those kind of libraries for your marketplaces to be your own websites, just to be aware of that these licenses can change. And if you are using them for your campaigns, just be aware that if you do need to credit the photographers, credit them. Don't get into issues with on the legal side of things. Because when they do clamp down, they do clamp down hard because that's a small part of how they get a bit of their money back. Yeah.
Very important, everyone. Make sure you're using copyright properly.
Yeah.
All right. So last question for you today is, what's one piece of advice that you'd like to share with everybody?
Okay. I would say it's if you're building a marketplace or launching any product, building any businesses, providing any services, make sure that the market that you are working on is a big market. And this is something that I've learned recently as well, where you can have a superb team, a strong team, strong with execution. But if your market is too small and too niche, it's not a big enough market to grow, you can only be a company of that size. But if you are working on a huge market, even though your execution may fumble, you may not have the best team, you will still have a reasonable market size and grow to become a good sized company. So I would say market size is one of those things that is oftentimes overlooked, especially for when I speak to friends who have started Shopify websites or other websites who are dealing with marketplaces or dealing with buyers directly. So I guess this is relevant for your audience as well. Make sure that the market size that you are operating in, that you're selling your products in, is large enough so that you can grow to a certain size and not be limited by that market size that you cannot affect.
Yeah. Very great advice. I mean, definitely very important to strategize and do your proper research and really realize what the market is and what's available.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Keith, for joining us today. If anybody wanted to reach out to you and contact you, what's the best way? Email, LinkedIn?
Yeah, email or LinkedIn is fine.
All right, great. We will provide those details for everybody. And again, thank you so much for joining us on today's session. All right, everybody, that's all that we have for today on today's session of Inspire. Until next time, be inspired.